You're at the North American Guitar in London, a fantastic world-class retailer of high-end guitars. And this is the Boutique Guitar Showcase Tour. We are in, I don't know, 18 or 19 dates of about 25 in 8 countries around the world. So we're mostly through the tour for this year. And we were in London last year. We love being here. So such a rich history of guitar and guitar making. Guitars here from Steve Klein and Ulrich Teufel and Michael Spalt, which people have heard about maybe for decades and have never had a chance to put their hands on. And there's a number of guitar makers that maybe you've never heard of before that I think are doing really interesting things. I think the youngest guitar maker who's part of the tour right now is about 23 years old, who's doing some amazing work. That's Max Spohn from Germany, one of Raymond Kraut's apprentices, and all things in between. You know, the show is really about what guitar makers are doing today. Whereas most guitar stores and what people see, the average guitar enthusiast, sees guitar innovations that have reached mass populace. There were innovations in 1937, in 1957, 1985, but they're not really examples of what guitar makers are doing today. The guitar continues to evolve, always has evolved. From the very first guitars, the modern guitar comes from Antonio Torres, and he's responsible for both the concert classical guitar and the flamenco guitar. 2 very different approaches to playing the guitar right from the start, and so that has continued to evolve. And so there's about 35 guitars here from I think about 28 guitar makers from all around the world. Acoustic, electric, bass, archtop. Try and represent as much as we can. They have to be unique in themselves, but they also have to be a part of the overall picture of what we're trying to paint. As esoteric as it sounds, I look for truth. I'm looking for truth in the design, truth in the approach. The guitar represents the guitar maker, typically. There are some designs where they're hired to make a design to fill a particular purpose, but when it's done really well, it's honest. And often when we see guitars that we think, well, it's interesting, but I don't quite, it's usually because we don't see the truth in it. There's some sort of inconsistency. I think there are many small guitar makers who make incredibly high quality instruments, and that is the goal of many of them. I'm not someone who likes to draw a hard contrast between production levels and small production levels, because frankly, there are people like Bob Taylor, who was a small guitar maker, who I think the entire world is making higher quality guitars because of the work that he's done in a factory. And there are people who pursue perfection. But I don't think perfection is actually necessarily the goal always, because a guitar is defined by its limitations, not by its perfection. If we all made the perfect guitar, I guess it'd kind of all sound the same. But we think of guitars really by their limitations. When we think about a Telecaster versus a Les Paul, it's not because they both do everything, it's because they don't do everything. Everyone who's in the music industry, might say it started with this particular guitar moment, but really it started with a song somewhere that had us inspired. And I've loved music from a very, very early age. I was the kid going to kindergarten with a concert tee on, and and my friends just thought of me as music and Jamie were synonymous from a very, very young age. But I've been in every aspect of the industry. I've been a touring player. I've been a retailer, a wholesaler, a manufacturer, an art gallery show guitarist, sculptural art. I mean, you name it in the guitar industry, and I've probably done it or been involved in some way or another, which is why I'm now valued as a consultant, I guess. And so this particular concept, the Boutique Guitar Showcase, was actually part of the NAMM show, coming to me and saying that there's a lot of guitar makers around the world who are going to small guitar shows, but they're not coming to the NAMM show, the biggest guitar show in the world. They're a not-for-profit organization. They're supposed to take care of the industry. A lot of people don't realize that. And so when they see we're not taking care of this sector, they go into action. And they started to look for what they call in corporate speak a subject matter expert. That ended up being me. And the Boutique Guitar Showcase at NAMM was more or less me listening to guitar makers, talking with them, and trying to design a section of the show that really met their needs. It's a lot of things. I'm not just curating a particular guitar. I'm looking at a balance between electrics, acoustics, basses. My responsibilities are not just to guitar makers, it's to the NAMM show, it's to the press, it's to the retailers, all aspects of the music industry, because that's what the NAMM show is. It's the most important musical instrument show in the world. And so there's a lot of things, right down to the personalities. I'm looking for maximum contrast, not in personalities, but in the instruments. And honestly, I even consider who I place where based on who they are as a person. And will it be a good experience for the other people within the boutique guitar showcase based on the personalities? I look for my biggest smiles and the most engaging people and put them on the aisles, because they make everyone feel welcome and come on in, you know. And but I also balance. We do art installations at the show, and I try and make in between the art installations a guitar that is very much not an art installation. I don't mean it's ugly, but I mean it's very relatable on a very guitar fundamental level, so people recognize that, oh, there's guitars in there, and there's these crazy guitars in there, all sorts, and so it's quite involved, and it's a conversation about many different aspects. I think that anybody in the world can fall in love with a boutique guitar. I mean, they're honest, wonderful instruments, at least the ones that we have with us. There's a lot of amazing instrument makers out there, and the guitar is so personal. I mean, it's an instrument that is literally a physical and audio conversation. You know, you move it, it moves you. It's a give and take constant thing, and when the conversation is right, it's glorious. And you want to connect with the person who made it in the same way you feel some sort of gratitude or connection to the person who made it as well. And who wouldn't want that? The thing is, there are economics involved. And in order for someone to make just a few guitars a year, they work all the time. Often, many of them work more hours than perhaps they would with a regular job. It takes a lot to do that. And there's reality, economics. If you're a guitar maker, and you make 10 guitars a year, and you have expenses, business expenses, materials, shops, machinery, how can they be anything less than 10 grand each? That's just the reality of it. Factories and production models allow us to get to lower and lower price points. But if money wasn't involved, I don't think we'd have much of a purpose for factories, frankly. I have a few guitars. A lot of them are historic pieces for me. Despite me dealing with many luxurious items, I'm a minimalist personally. I have a Nick Huber guitar that Nick built for me personally at a certain point. I mean, I didn't spec it. I told Nick, I said, you know me well enough, just make me a guitar. I have a Jens Ritter bass. I have a Donovan Lee acoustic guitar. They're all boutique guitars. Drums also, if you want to know that, you know. I'm a multi-instrumentalist, I love that stuff. But yes, they are unique pieces that are as much rich with relational history as they are, you know, the materials.